Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show.
Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter show. My name is James.
My name is Jo. Thank you so much for joining us. So our second show of 2025 and our first show of February, now that we've done the 97,000 days of January.
I love that post, Jo. I love that post you put up last week.
I mean, I think we all felt every single one. I think February is feeling a bit brighter. So we've got a fantastic guest with us today who's going to hopefully shine some optimism on 2025. So who is with us today, James?
Indeed. Well, today we're delighted to be rejoined, I should say, by Ian Olsen. Ian is a recruitment industry NED. If you don't know him, he's a growth coach, business mentor. He leverages, sorry to say, Ian, nearly 40 years of experience where he's helped recruitment businesses achieve tremendous high growth. And since leaving Hayes PLC all those years ago, well, 13, 14 years ago, he's actually worked with over 50 firms, helping them achieve growth statistics of between 30 and 300% per annum, and very successful too. He is now a member of APSCO's representative committee and a strategic advisor. And also, Ian has been named a top 10 global business influencer, no less, by Analytica, where he explores, very relevant today, AI's impact on recruitment and the future of work. Ian is really passionate about coaching both individuals and businesses in recruitment, sales and leadership. So there we go. And as I say, Jo, welcome to a bright sunny day. I'm down in London. Although this is a false background, it is a background I took a few moments ago. It is a beautiful, chilly blue day, but there we go. But Ian, delighted to welcome you on board again.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Jo. Lovely to see you both. And I do like your background. I keep expecting a Pink Floyd pig to fly in the background. There you go. That's for those of us of a certain age who remember the album. But,
Indeed. And if you don't know it, go look it up because it is pretty good.
It is.
Yes, exactly. Ask ChatGPT, which we were just talking about before, weren't we?
Yeah, indeed. Well, that sort of brings us nicely into a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about today. Jo, where should we start? Should we talk about jumping into the top 5 growth markets, or where should we get?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got a few things that we want to pick Ian's brains about today. And as we go through, if you are interested in connecting with Ian, we're going to flash his details up on the screen. We are going to talk about the topic of growth markets. So Ian's opinions and observations of top 5 growth markets for this year. We're going to talk about global opportunities. We're then going to move the topic onto the subject of AI. So I don't think we can do a show now without having at least one portion of the show dedicated to AI. We're going to talk about AI and its impact on 2025. And then finally, we're going to talk about maximizing the opportunities of AI as recruitment leaders as well. And Ian spends an awful lot of his time coaching businesses, high growth businesses, and working with recruitment leaders. So we're going to get his insights on that. So quite a lot for us to shove into half an hour, but we'll get there.
We will. Go on then. Here, give us some headlines.
Okay, so well, you said I've been in recruitment for nearly 40 years. What you don't know is it's probably about 2 weeks short of the 40th anniversary, but there you go. So having worked through a whole load of recessions, one thing I can tell you is that in every economic downturn, let's call them that, there are always opportunities, there are always markets growing, and the secret to have a long career in any industry, but particularly in recruitment, is to identify what those markets are and where they are. So because yours is a global show, and we're reaching out to people in Asia, Australia, Europe, Middle East, over to the Americas, as well as the UK, then I've expanded this, and I've written a little blog and a fact sheet. So if people want to connect with me, ask me, I can send them the details and also the data. Obviously, I coach people all the way across the world. So for me, January wasn't 197 days, Jo. I apologize, but I've just come back from a few weeks in Japan and Australia, and it was bloody gorgeous down under there, and it was great. But anyway, less about that. So let's go through the 5 markets. So the big markets, all of these have got trends that are going on, whether economics impacts them or not. So this is not necessarily economic dependent. So the first one is healthcare. In the Western world and in the major recruitment markets, James, as you and I talked about in the last chat we had, the Western world is mainly where the main recruitment markets are, and healthcare is probably one of the major issues. So healthcare is a growth market, both in the UK here, where our current government has committed to increase their spending on the NHS, and I think it's fair to say that I'm seeing a lot, I'm hearing a lot of opportunity of businesses that are already in those markets, structuring, repositioning themselves and seeing growth there, a growth in demand, and both across the NHS, the public sector and private sector. It's the same in the US. It's the same across Asia. Interestingly enough, I'm told if you want to go to an A&E department that is staffed by 75% British doctors, you'll find Sydney and Brisbane are very, very good. But that's an aside we can talk about. Second big market, technology. Tech is a global industry. It's been around for years. It is in tech recruitment in the UK is in a somewhat of a bit of a recession. And let's be clear about that. But there are still markets in there that are growing. Artificial intelligence, we've just talked about, and I expect that to grow this year considerably more, particularly in the UK. We'll come back and talk about the global trends a little later on. But certainly data, I mean, if you look at the number one skills globally, it's cybersecurity, it's data analysts, it's software engineers, it's artificial intelligence, and there are other markets that are appearing on the horizon. That I've got a couple of contacts of mine who are going into those, and I probably won't let you all know what they are because they're going into them at the beginning, so it would be big opportunity. Third big market is finance. Okay. Now, I challenge this when I start looking at the data on this because I'm thinking, well, where's finance? I mean, we're talking about there is a financial downturn in the market. That is sure, that is certain. But there's an awful lot of growth. Again, technology permeates that. So you've got healthcare technology, you've got finance technology, you've got the fintech arena. If you'll have to forgive me, I'm just going to have to revert to my notes. So the data I picked up is compliance and regulatory hiring. Obviously, sounds terrible, but if we go into a tariffs world, people will need a lot of data on that. Rise of digital banking globally, fintech hiring. We are quite advanced in the UK, having travelled across
fintech,
Australia, Japan particularly. I was a bit surprised, a lot further behind us. Investment management, mergers and acquisitions. I totally, everyone I talk to in that sector expects that to grow. And again, there's this offshoring and nearshoring and shifting of job and shifting stuff. So globally, there are, again, big opportunities there. Strong markets, US, crypto is a big one there. UK, fintech in the UK, Middle East, Dubai, and Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong. You'll notice that I haven't mentioned mainland Europe. And I have to say, the numbers I'm hearing are not good for those in mainland Europe for a whole raft of reasons. The major economies, France and Germany, are not growing, and the impact of any tariffs that Trump puts on Europe are likely to impact Germany, France, and Italy, which is one of the growing economies. So they're going to be in for a tough ride. Fourth one is renewable energy. Everybody, knows what that renewable energy is coming. There's a global shortage of skills in that sector. Again, the UK, when it comes to wind energy, I was told when I was out in, I think I was traveling through Dubai, somebody said to me, which is the richest nation on earth for oil? And I said, I don't know. Saudi Arabia? He said, yeah. Which is the richest nation on earth for wind energy? And I said, don't know. I think I said somewhere like Russia and I'm wrong. It's the United Kingdom.
For wind?
For wind. One of the big advantages of although it didn't sound like we had it in January, Joe, with your 197 days of gloomy skies, but we have one of the windiest nations and areas on earth. And so,
Adelaide,
yeah,
nation.
And we could, I mean, the trouble is when the wind doesn't blow, we got a problem. We need one of those big things behind you, James. But anyway, that's a growth market. We need installers. The UK current administration is looking to invest in that. That's a market that everybody needs to be into, and it impacts construction and it impacts engineering as well. And I think, you know, the other area globally, which is big, is logistics and warehousing. Reuters have highlighted that this will be one of the big growth markets globally. I'm not sure how much growth there still is in the UK market, because I do expect there to be a little bit of a. I don't see the consumer market growing that much in the UK over the next 12 months. I think there's going to be a tightening of the belts, despite the fact, good news, interest rates went down about an hour ago, which is good. But globally, you know, the rise of e-commerce and that sort of thing is still, they're still expecting to be an extra $500 billion growth in that market, according to Reuters, across the next 4 or 5 years. So that is huge, very big. One market which, if I was looking at just the UK, I expect to be in that top 5 and certainly quite high up, is construction. I think the construction sector at the moment is definitely growing, and that's good news, because construction, without going into macroeconomics, has a high multiplier effect. So every pound the government spends in construction typically has a 7-time multiplier in terms of, you know, growing the economy. I.e., if we all buy houses, we then go and buy paint, we then go and buy other white goods, you know, we do all these things. So
it's that flow down through the supply chain, isn't it? To all of it, yeah.
And obviously, if you're going to build renewables, you need infrastructure and that sort of thing, and new hospitals again, so on and so forth. So those are my global predictions, and I'm currently coaching people on all of those continents, and I'm not hearing anything that's contrary to that. No. In healthcare, I'm also seeing an upturn in life sciences.
Yeah,
it's quite positive. That's been in a bit of a doldrums, although again, if we start chucking tariffs around, you know, between the US and Europe, then that might impact that market. But again, we're back to compliance. You know, I said compliance is a big thing. So
yeah.
So there you go. That's my 5.
Good, Joe. You got a question?
Very good. Yeah, I've got 2 questions actually. So, okay, I will make it a 2-part question. So, Ian, answer me this. It's really, really interesting to hear that those are the sort of the top 5 growth markets. I want to ask you on the other side of the scale now. Are there any markets that you think are going to be in trouble for whatever reason in 2025?
In trouble? Great question. I didn't do any research on that one.
Well, I know you hadn't. I just thought.
Joe. I'm not sure I want to answer it, because even if I did know, I'm not sure I want to be terrifying the people that are operating in those markets.
Well, yeah.
What I would say to those, what I would say is, I think at the moment artificial intelligence is impacting, and automation is impacting a lot of areas, and most recruiters, if they're smart, will know what's going on. So let's just, you know, if you're an accountancy recruitment and you're looking at supplying bookkeepers, well, you're not got much of a future. Pickers and packers in warehouses over time are going to disappear, because we aren't going to need them, because, you know, Amazon have got fully automated warehouses, as do a lot of other people. So if that's a market you're in, you need to look at moving out of it. I'm not saying you have to move out of it tomorrow, but you need to move out quite quickly. I think in the UK, I think retail will not be very good market to be in for the next 12 months. You don't need me to go in and bore everybody in America and the Middle East about, you know, the national insurance rise that the government's put in there. But hospitality and retail in the UK will not be a good market to be in. I think if you're in Australia, for example, you know, the construction market there would definitely be in their top 2, because obviously there's a lot of growth. And I spent some time in Western Australia, which is one of the fastest growing economies in parts of Australia itself. And that was really interesting. See, I showed a friend of mine a photograph of the Perth skyline. He went there 10 years ago. It was totally unrecognizable from what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I, you know, I'm more than happy if somebody wants to drop me a message. But what I don't want to put out there is this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, because I think there's too much gloom.
Yeah, that, do you know what?
Okay.
That's very true. And I think we're going to talk about opportunities in a second, actually, but I think there are opportunities in any market, providing that you know what the potential threats are. And we're going to talk about AI in a minute as well, because I think automation is making it is changing the landscape in multiple sectors. And again, something that businesses need to be aware of, you know. Good. Thanks for that. Right, James, we're gonna push on with the next topic.
Yeah, but before that, so up there we've got a link to Ian's LinkedIn account. Can I just sort of say to people, if you do connect with Ian, just please do reference that you saw him on the Retained Recruiter show, so you can acknowledge that you know, you've had this conversation. Otherwise, you know, it's very difficult when you're trying to manage all those contacts. And as recruiters, we all know that we've got there. I'm going to say hello to Dax, who's watching in today. Hello, Dax. So listen, thanks very much, Ian, for all that information. I think when you look at some of those markets that you said, and just to recap for people, we said healthcare, IT, finance, renewables, and logistics, with you know, construction added into the UK. But it's interesting when you look at, and we want to come to those global opportunities, because again, speaking to, you know, a higher volume of UK recruiters, you know, we are a global audience, but speaking to a higher volume of UK recruiters, we are seeing UK recruiters look to other markets. And interesting, when you talked about the construction market there in Australia, one of our longest clients is actually doing a lot of work in Australia from the UK, from good old Yorkshire in the UK, and actually moving people from the UK to those markets. So when you then said earlier about the fact that, you know, if you want to see an English doctor, go to Brisbane or Sydney, then yeah, that if you want to find an English technician, then they're probably going to be in some of those markets as well. You know, the land of milk and honey and all that type of thing. But I think there are opportunities. So let's talk about and I want to see if we can sort of bring it around from a leadership perspective in, with regard to how do you, if you know these global opportunities, how do you position or reposition yourself to go chasing some of those opportunities, and where might they be?
A good question. I mean, what I'm about to say now has been true for 40 years, and I think it becomes extremely obvious and extremely acute in an economic downturn, and that is the best recruiters, the most resilient recruiters, stay close to their customers. They know their customers. They are what I would call, they're either trusted partners or they're strategic partners. And the sales and training, Joe knows this, the sales training that I do with people, which is around selling high quality, high value solutions, works exactly on that. It's building those relationships. So if you're having conversations with your customer, going back to your point earlier, Joe, they will very quickly, they've had 10 conversations with customers, they'll know which jobs aren't going to be in recruitment in the next 2 to 3 years. They won't need me to tell them, because they should know. Secondly, James, they'll also know what the opportunities are if they're having those good conversations.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the building block. You guys sell retained recruitment. I used to do retained recruitment. Probably, if I think about it, it's where I started my recruitment days back in 1985, Joe.
Wow.
Before you were born.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, man.
So yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's you know, that's the very simple pathway, the fastest pathway. And also, it's very easy to pivot from supplying them, I don't know, let's say, if you're supplying them pigs and packers in a warehouse, it's very easy to pivot into technologies who are working in logistics, for example. It's a lot easier to do that. And if they trust you and have trusted you to deliver for the last 2 or 3 years, you know, when they've suddenly got a shortfall of 10 people for a shift this afternoon, and you come up with those 10 people and they're all good, well, that's relationship. That's what people want. And that's, whenever I talk to hiring managers, that's all they want. It's a big pain if they need workers on a temporary or a permanent basis. They want a resilient supplier, finds me the people, puts them in the job, bang.
Yeah.
Away you go.
And you know what? I wonder this every year at the end of a year, and I wonder it at the beginning of the year. I wonder how many recruiters, recruitment businesses, recruitment leaders are sat out there now, having had those conversations with their clients, reviewing the year that's gone, you know, looking ahead to the year that's coming, and having those, you know, a service review, a year review meeting with the client, a strategy meeting, a pipeline meeting, asking your client those key questions. How has business been? How is business looking? What's your recruitment strategy looking like for next year? Challenges, opportunities, etc. Where can you see your business in 3 years' time? What could affect that? All these questions, again, like you said, Ian, rightfully so. If you went out and you asked, all your clients those questions, it puts you in a really insightful position going into the year. We spend ages talking to people about, what is it that clients want? And the answer is very simple. Go and ask them. Go and ask them what's hurting them, what's paining them, and then go and provide it.
I think one of the biggest challenges there, we're banding these words around like relationship and client, and the challenge is for people now is to actually forge a client relationship rather than a customer relationship.
Yeah,
because we don't have enough clients. Joe, we talk about on the Retained Recruiter show, and this and also the academy that we run, we talk about 3 categories of people: clients, customers, and prospects. And the challenge is most people are still stuck in the customer level. They haven't actually migrated the relationship or developed the relationship such that there is a relationship, so they can actually go and ask those questions. So they're sometimes on the periphery. And so, Ian, I think again from a leadership perspective, it's about talking about what can you do to build a recruitment strategy to go and make sure you do have those relationships with clients, and you've got to really work hard to that.
Well, okay. So Joe and I are NLP master practitioners. The way I always try and portray this is you have to put yourself in the mind of the customer. You have to understand the world that the customer is in, because once you do that, it becomes a lot easier to build those relationships. So if you want to open the door, then we can quote, Joe and I can quote the good old what's it called, Bob Etherington, cold calling for chickens.
Yes.
Now he used to say you have to have 6 or 7 conversations with a client before they're willing to engage with you. Joe's going and reaching behind. She's got the book. There you go, Joe. You see, okay. There's always a new business book out, but do you know what? 9 times out of 10, they're recycling stuff.
Absolutely.
On the question you asked me, so you need to open that door. You need to be able to supply something. So again, one of the things I use is the law of reciprocity, which means the law of reciprocal action. The easiest way to give you an example of that is if I went out this lunchtime to my local town and I was just about to park my car and just put some money in the meter, and a little old lady comes to me. In fact, if this was you, Jones, I'm 95% know the answer to this question before I ask it. But if that little old lady gives you a ticket and says to you, James, here you are, love, have my ticket. Don't put £3 in the meter. It's got a couple of hours left on there, and then turns round and picks up 4 heavy bags of shopping. What would you do?
I'd pick up the bags of shopping for her, wouldn't I? Because there we go.
Why would you do that?
Because she's just given me something. So it's so strange that this is twice in the same week I've heard the quote of the law of reciprocity. Because I was talking to one of Joe's trainees. What I mean by that is people she's training with as part of the Retained Recruiter Academy, and he said, "Well, Joe talks about, and there's a name of the person who goes with that, Joe, and he couldn't.
Robert Cialdini.
Yeah, and he just couldn't. Not that he actually couldn't say the word reciprocity.
Well, that's because it's reciprocation. Okay, so obviously Robert Cialdini is American, so they like to say reciprocity, and actually it's reciprocation. But it is hard to say, yes.
So if you take, so you asked me a question. So if you take so I'm going to give people a load of information. I'm going to give them articles. They could give one of those articles, email it to a customer and say, this is what the markets are quoting, or this is what the industry, this is what Reuters are saying, this is what the Financial Times, the New York Post are saying. What are you finding? Do you think this is true? Do you anticipate your market's growing? Now, they're not going to suddenly pick up the phone and go, oh my God, I've been waiting for that to land on my desk. But if you do it with 50 or 100 people and you do that on a different article another week later, or something else, or a white paper that if you're in construction and the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors submits a market report, or you and I have talked about SIA, or there's another report that you and I were discussing about the RPO market. If you share that, eventually people will go, actually, this person isn't trying to sell me something. They're sharing stuff. You become seen as a value. You elevate yourself from just the plethora of other recruiters out there, and you start to have a value. And then the client will engage with you. And then, but when you've got that engagement, you can elevate it to the next level, you know, and particularly where a client says to you, well, we're about to move our business model away from pickers and packers in warehouse, and we're going to put some technology in the warehouses and do this, that, and the other. And you go to them, all right, that sounds great. Presumably you'll need some engineers then to maintain those machines or program them. Where are you getting those from?
Cool. Well, listen, again, there's lots of things and people can investigate that, but we need to get on to, because we've still got a few minutes left and we need to talk about that little known subject called AI. So, I think, the impact, everyone can see it though, Ian, but let's try and put some perspective on this in terms of what recruitment owners and leaders need to be aware of, perhaps.
Okay, well, look, I'm not a gloom and doom merchant on this. I see there's a massive opportunity in the market for the recruitment industry to reinvent itself. Of all the things I've seen in the last 40 years, I think this is the one thing that will change recruitment beyond recognition by certainly 2035, probably even 2030. And let me start by...
Sorry, I just want to challenge you on that one. When you say it's in 10 years' time, what does that mean?
I'm going to give you I'm going to go through.
Sorry.
That's all right, don't worry. So basically, there are things that we do as human beings in the recruitment process that we're the experts at, and that computers will not be able to replicate straight away. They might do in 20, 30 years' time, but not straight away. So the first one is emotional intelligence and relationship building. So if you are selling a human being into a job, the best people to persuade are humans. So that part of the process that we're good at, you can't get AI to replace that. What you can do is augment that process with artificial intelligence. So you can have a note taker that takes the notes on the call. You can, and I've talked about this with a young man who I've been working with now for over 12 months, called Toby, who's a recruiter who works 1 day a week and hits his targets in 1 day a week using AI. Not bad, that. And he spends the other 4 days, by the way, working with other companies on artificial intelligence and building processes. So, you can use a note taker, obviously it's like everything. The more you pay, the better you get. So you're literally then cutting and pasting and putting that. I don't think Toby would mind me sharing this with you. He's slightly dyslexic. So if he was writing notes and having to put that into a computer, that wouldn't take him 3 or 4 minutes. That would take him 5 or 10. And he would be putting more mental effort into concentrating on that conversation and writing the notes down than he would be listening to the speaker. Yeah. So Joe and I talk about, what's he called? Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about listening skill as being the most important thing. And he talks about 5 levels of listening. Well, most humans, when they're having a conversation, are only listening at level 1 or 2. And Toby will struggle to get to level 3 or 4. But a good recruiter will have a long conversation with a candidate, selling them the job, understanding what the candidate's looking for, and they'll be listening. A good recruiter will be listening at 3 or 4. So AI can help you and give you a better... It can also... So all of those human interactions, whether it's selling a job, selling an offer, following up the offer, selling the candidate to the client, all of that is human stuff. So my advice, and as we talked offline, I've written a paper on leadership for the APSCO businesses in the UK and global, in fact. So it'll be available to people in Europe, in Asia, and I think also to the APSCO members we have in the States. And that's on leadership. So what I say to people is, I'll give you a quick 5 points, and I'll be releasing a blog on this next week. Knowing those things that we do better, what we need to do is reimagine what that recruitment process will look like in 5 years' time when all this tech is automating bits of the process. So that's the first thing. Then what we need to do is start to redesign our process to make sure that we use human beings more productively. Recent productivity figures I've seen are sometimes 5 to 10 times improvement in productivity. So Toby is getting 5 times, but even he and I have talked about how you could increase that. So once you've got a vision of what the business might look like, let's come back to what you do in retained recruitment. That's all about relationships, which means you can spend more time building those relationships with your candidates, your clients, the hiring managers. You can invest a lot more in that because the tech is making a note of the conversation, is then putting that into a structured. So a lot of your clients will have a structured interview form or a profile or a resume. In America, they call them resumes. So, you'll have a format, and AI will just be able to listen to your conversation, put it into that format, particularly if you've got, as Joe and I would have talked about, structured questions. So it's doing all of that for you. I mean, I could talk about this for another hour, James, but that's giving you an idea. And then what people need to look at is their people, their staff at the moment. Have they got the skills, relationship, emotional intelligence to do that job that we're going to have in 5 years' time? And the short answer is, if they don't, then we need to train and train them up and skill them up.
Yeah.
If we don't have the skills, we have to redeploy them, and if we can't redeploy them, we have to exit them from the business.
Yeah. I think a lot of thing I'm hearing from recruiters is I think they're actually hearing what you're saying there, the positivity of how do you gain productivity improvements. And I was talking to one of our clients earlier on this week, and one of the challenges, and it's one of those things that it just takes time. But when you're reviewing long lists to find the candidates, it's like trying to figure out. And initially it's a skills and experience match. So has this person got the skills? Have we got the experience? You can just drop into ChatGPT 10 CVs, drop in the job description, and say, please rank these and identify the skills, and then pull out for me the contact name and telephone number, so I can then just call them now, and it does it for you in 30 seconds.
Exactly.
That's a 15 to 30 minute exercise. That's just,
it might be even more than that.
It probably would be, it might be, but that's that magnitude of 5 that you're just talking about. And so, by the way, you've referenced Toby, and he's just made a comment. So, hello, Toby, thanks for joining us today, and also Benjamin, I think, as well as joining us. So they all know you. So you've got a great following. Anyway, but Malay has just said he's still waiting to get something new on this call. Well, the reality is, Malay, there's as we said with some of the books, some of the best things have been written. It's about re-talking about these particular points. But what we maybe missed the start. We've actually shared with you all what the 5 markets are that we've touched on. So I think we are trying to share with people some of that information, but each to their own. But thank you for joining us today. What as we come towards the end of this, let's wrap up with some of the points that people could possibly look at in terms of how they can perhaps maximise some of the opportunities out there that they can do. So let's just have your final thoughts on those.
Oh gosh, we've given them a lot, haven't we? Really, where did we start? There's those 5 markets. I've got some data on articles from McKinsey's and various other people which they can look at. If it resonates with them and they think it might resonate with their clients, they can share those with their clients. They can use that as part of that reciprocal action, Joe, as opposed to reciprocity for those of you in the US. So we can do that. As I say, I've got this. There's a white paper coming out for members of APSCO, my blog, which is about leadership and AI. I will be releasing myself next week. It's Brilliant. In a slightly different format, but it's more narrative than the prescriptive APSCO blog. People, if they want to connect with me and they want to download and they message me, I will send the link to that when it goes live. So those are 2 things. I just think people need to stay positive and resilient. I think there was a very powerful thing I saw, which I remember seeing, a long time ago, by a great American speaker called Jack Canfield. And he talked about beliefs. And I remember one of the illustrations of this is that a whole load of engineers at Massachusetts, MIT, let's say, been analysing the flight of a bumblebee. And apparently the bumblebee aerodynamically should not fly. But you know why the bumblebee flies? Because no one's ever told it shouldn't fly.
Well, there you go. It's something. It's about mindset, isn't it, and belief.
It is,
right?
And that's why when Joe asked me sorry, I shouldn't use that. What are the bad sectors to be in? I wasn't really going to answer it because I think people probably know, and they don't need me to tell them what they need to see. They need to know where the light is. So I'd rather point people to the light. And seriously, I'm more than happy. I'm not working full time these days. I'm semi-retired, as Joe knows. So I'm more than happy to have conversations with most people, and they don't need to think, it's going to cost me money. So if any of your, as long as we can agree at a sensible time, I'm not into getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to talk to somebody in New Zealand. Much as I love New Zealand and Australia,
New Zealand's right at the moment. They're 13 hours ahead of us in the UK. You can do a 9 o'clock call and it's 10 o'clock.
You can. Oh, you can always find time.
Yeah.
I've got two sons in Australia, so we can always find a time. But I'm just not into getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Somebody tried to ring me at 3 in the morning the other day. I'm thinking, what planet are you on, or what planet do you think I'm on?
Well, what time zone?
We're welcome here, I think. I do apologise. I can talk for hours with you two, as we always do.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Anyway, go on, Joe. So I just noticed that we also got some comments from Alex, who's just sort of referencing the fact that you two guys are NLP master practitioners. So I think Alex saying, when you understand that, again, it can help your relationship. So that's something else for people to look at as well. So, Joe, I'm going to hand over to you.
Good. I think it's been really useful, insightful. I love the stuff about the growth markets. I think it just helps people, doesn't it? These shows are great. We get on every couple of weeks. We have guests. They share their insights. Hopefully it helps to point people in the right direction. Always going to come back to the same thing. You can have all the technology on the planet, but at the end of the day, this is a people. It's a contact sport. It's a people sport. So speak to them. Speak to your candidates. Speak to your clients. Technology isn't designed to take us further away from our clients and candidates. It's designed to try and bring us closer. And I think we need to get on the right side of that. And if you do, then you build client and candidate advocacy. You get this information. You'll build relationships. But yes, hiding behind mass emails and then wondering why no one's coming back to you. We need to get more things.
James and Joe, one thing I would like to leave a lot of your audience with, because I know a number of these will be iIntro customers. We've gone through 10, 15 years where, as Joe just alluded to, the keyboard warriors and the CV bashers, firing them out the door, have managed to have quite a strong foot in that market. The artificial intelligence, if it's used in the right way, will turn that advantage absolutely 180 degrees in the other direction. So your iIntro retained, recruitment market customers, that if they do it right, the world is their oyster. Every client I talk to who is not either a customer of yours or is in that space is looking at retained recruitment. Whether it's in Australia, Japan, where I was the other week, whether it's in New York, and I'm talking about here of MDs, senior vice presidents, to some pretty good big companies. So that's the market. Your guys can get a really big slice of that, but they need to get close to their customers and build those relationships.
Yeah. Amen.
That's what I leave everyone with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Ian, we appreciate that, and obviously we appreciate you sharing your time and your thoughts. And so, just one final plug for Ian. He himself practices that law of reciprocity. So that's what he's saying. Let's connect with him, and he will gift you some of these reports and blogs, and you'll find information that you can then use. And as I say, if that then leads you back to have a further chat with Ian, like people like Benjamin and people like Toby, then you'll find that actually working with Ian is a great thing as well. And we'd also love to work with anybody we haven't spoken to as well. Which is why we sort of flashed up. If you want to sort of spend some time with us, just book a meeting with us. Nice and easy to do. But I say, Ian, on behalf of us all here at the Retained Recruiter Show, really do appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. Invaluable as ever, and we look forward to having you back later on in the year. Joe, we've got another show coming up.
Yes, in 2 weeks' time. So every fortnight, different shows. We've got a number of really great speakers and experts, industry experts coming up. So yeah, stay tuned, everybody. And thank you so much for your time today, Ian. We appreciate it.
So on that note, I'm going to say it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
All the best. Thanks a lot.